A quiet morning habit sits in millions of kitchens across the world, steaming gently in a cup while most people believe it is harmless or even helpful without a second thought. That familiar aroma of coffee has become part of daily life, especially for older adults who rely on it for energy, comfort, and routine. Yet beneath that simple comfort lies a detail that is often ignored, and it may be influencing blood sugar levels more than expected. Coffee has long been discussed in health conversations, sometimes praised and sometimes warned against, but very few people focus on the way it is actually consumed and how timing, ingredients, and quantity quietly shift what it does inside the body. Most seniors continue the same routine every morning, assuming that if something feels normal, it must be safe. But the body does not always respond based on habits alone. It responds to signals, and those signals can change depending on how coffee enters the system. The truth is, the same cup of coffee can support balance in blood sugar or disrupt it, depending on a few overlooked details that rarely get attention in everyday advice. In this video, a clear and simple breakdown will be shared that explains how coffee interacts with blood sugar regulation, why certain common drinking habits may create unexpected spikes, and what subtle changes can help the body maintain better stability throughout the day. The focus will be on practical understanding, not complicated science, so that anyone can follow along without confusion. There will be a closer look at why drinking coffee on an empty stomach can send a strong stress signal through the body, how added sugar and sweeteners may quietly influence insulin response, and why timing plays a larger role than most people realize. There will also be a simple explanation of how too much coffee can shift hormone balance in a way that affects glucose control, especially in older age when the body becomes more sensitive to internal changes. These are not dramatic changes that are easy to notice immediately, which is why they often go unrecognized for years, slowly influencing energy levels, cravings, and even long-term metabolic health. What makes this topic important is not fear, but awareness. Many people are not aware that coffee is not just a drink, but a biological signal that interacts with stress hormones, digestion, and glucose regulation all at once. When understood correctly, it becomes possible to enjoy it in a way that supports the body rather than disrupts it. The goal here is to reveal those hidden connections in a simple and direct way so that everyday choices become more informed and intentional. By the end of this video, there will be a clear understanding of how seniors can adjust their coffee habits without giving up what they enjoy, while still supporting more stable blood sugar levels. Small adjustments in routine can make a meaningful difference when repeated consistently over time, and those adjustments are often easier than most people expect. This is not about restriction, but about awareness of how timing, ingredients, and frequency work together inside the body in ways that are rarely explained in everyday conversations. As this information unfolds, each point will build a clearer picture of how a familiar drink can behave very differently depending on how it is handled, and why many common practices may not be as harmless as they appear. There is also a deeper connection between daily habits and long-term wellness that becomes more important with age, and coffee is one of those habits that quietly influences that balance every single day. Understanding this connection can help reduce unnecessary spikes in blood sugar, improve energy stability, and support overall comfort without requiring major lifestyle changes. This video will guide through all of these insights step by step in a simple and practical manner so that the information feels usable in real life, not just theoretical. Before moving further, welcome to this channel where simple health truths are explained in an easy and natural way without confusion or complicated language. If learning small daily habits that can improve long-term health is valuable, then subscribing will ensure that more practical and clear information like this reaches you regularly. Stay with this video until the end because the final part brings everything together into a simple routine that shows exactly how coffee can be adjusted in a way that supports steadier blood sugar and better daily balance without giving up the comfort of a familiar morning cup. A familiar morning scene repeats itself in countless homes where a cup of coffee is prepared almost automatically, without much thought about what it is actually doing inside the body. For many seniors, this routine feels comforting and stable, something that marks the beginning of the day with energy and familiarity. Yet within this simple habit, there are patterns that quietly influence how blood sugar behaves throughout the day, and most people never connect these small details to how they feel afterward. The first important habit begins right at the start of the morning when coffee is consumed on an empty stomach. At this moment, the body is still in a sensitive state after hours of rest, and instead of receiving balanced nutrition first, it suddenly gets a strong stimulant. This sends a clear signal to the internal system that something demanding is happening, even though no real physical activity has begun. At the same time, many people add sugar or flavored creamers to improve taste without realizing how quickly these additions turn a simple drink into a source of rapid glucose entry. The combination of caffeine and sugar creates a double effect that the body must process immediately, and this can influence insulin response in ways that are not always visible in the short term. There is also the habit of drinking multiple cups without considering timing or spacing, which keeps the body in a repeated cycle of stimulation instead of allowing natural balance to settle. Over time, these repeated patterns build up in a way that quietly affects how stable blood sugar levels remain throughout the day. You think you are doing something harmless, even healthy, because coffee is so widely accepted and even recommended in many discussions about energy and focus. But small mistakes in timing and ingredients can confuse your body in subtle ways that do not show immediate warning signs, which is why they are often ignored or misunderstood. When looking deeper at how coffee interacts with the body, it becomes important to shift the way it is understood. Coffee is not just a drink that provides energy or warmth. It acts more like a signal that communicates with internal systems responsible for energy regulation, including insulin sensitivity and stress response. This means the effect of coffee is not fixed, but depends heavily on how and when it is consumed. In some situations, it may support alertness and metabolic activity in a balanced way, while in other situations, it can contribute to instability in blood sugar control. It is not about quitting coffee or removing it completely from daily life, especially for seniors who have built strong habits around it over many years. It is about understanding that every cup sends a message to the body, and that message changes depending on the conditions under which it is consumed. Coffee affects insulin sensitivity, and this means it plays a role in how efficiently the body manages glucose after meals and during fasting periods. When this process is influenced repeatedly by poor timing or added ingredients, the body may begin to respond less predictably over time. The simple truth is that it is not about removing something familiar, but about sending the right signal to your body so that it can maintain better internal balance without unnecessary strain. One of the most common habits that affects this balance is drinking coffee immediately after waking up without eating anything beforehand. At this point in the morning, the body naturally produces higher levels of cortisol, which is a stress hormone designed to help with alertness and waking up. When caffeine is added on top of this natural cortisol rise, the body receives a stronger alert signal than necessary. This can create a situation where stress hormones remain elevated longer than they should, and this directly influences blood sugar levels. The body interprets this combined signal as a form of pressure or demand, even though the environment is calm. As a result, glucose regulation can become less stable for a period of time after consumption. This is why many people experience energy fluctuations or sudden fatigue later in the morning without understanding the reason behind it. The body thinks something stressful is happening, even when the day has not yet truly started. A simple adjustment, such as consuming a small meal or at least some form of light nutrition before coffee, can significantly change this response. When food is present, the body receives a more balanced signal, and the impact of caffeine becomes smoother and less disruptive. This allows the system to process energy more steadily instead of reacting in a sharp or stressful pattern. Another important habit that plays a hidden role is the addition of sugar and artificial sweeteners into coffee. This is often done without much consideration because it improves taste and makes the drink more enjoyable, especially for those who have been drinking it the same way for many years. However, sugar introduces a direct glucose spike into the bloodstream, which requires an immediate insulin response. When this happens alongside caffeine stimulation, the body is forced to manage two different signals at the same time, which can increase variability in blood sugar levels. Artificial sweeteners are often used as an alternative, but they are not always neutral in their effect. In some cases, they may confuse insulin response because the body detects sweetness without receiving actual glucose, which can affect how it prepares for energy processing in the future. Even sugar free does not always mean blood sugar friendly, especially when the body begins to interpret these signals inconsistently over time. This does not mean that every small addition is harmful in isolation, but repeated daily use creates a pattern that can influence how stable glucose control remains. A simpler approach, such as keeping coffee plain or using more balanced alternatives, can reduce unnecessary spikes and allow the body to maintain a more natural rhythm. When these adjustments are made consistently, the system does not need to constantly adapt to sudden changes in sugar intake, which helps maintain smoother energy levels throughout the day. Another factor that often goes unnoticed is the frequency of coffee consumption within a short period of time. Drinking multiple cups without proper timing can keep the body in a continuous state of stimulation. Instead of allowing natural cycles of rest and recovery, the system remains slightly activated for longer durations. This can interfere with how insulin functions, especially when combined with other daily habits such as irregular meals or lack of physical activity. Over time, this repeated stimulation may contribute to reduced sensitivity in how the body responds to glucose signals. The key issue here is not coffee itself, but the lack of spacing and awareness around how often it is consumed. When the body does not get enough time to reset between doses of caffeine, it becomes harder to maintain consistent internal balance. A more structured approach where coffee intake is limited and spaced appropriately allows the body to return to its natural state between each consumption. This creates a more stable environment for blood sugar regulation and reduces unnecessary fluctuations that may otherwise go unnoticed until they begin to affect daily energy and comfort. Another important layer in understanding how coffee affects the body comes from timing, and this is one of the most overlooked parts of daily habits, especially among seniors who often focus only on what they consume but not when they consume it. Coffee taken at the wrong time does not just influence alertness in the moment, it can quietly affect the body's recovery system during the night, which then carries forward into the next day. When coffee is consumed late in the afternoon or during the evening, caffeine remains active in the system far longer than most people realize. Even when sleep eventually comes, the body does not fully enter a deep restorative state because the nervous system is still partially stimulated. This reduced quality of sleep has a direct connection with how blood sugar is regulated the next day. Poor sleep creates a situation where the body becomes more sensitive to stress signals and less efficient at processing glucose. This is why mornings after disrupted sleep often feel heavier, with lower energy and sometimes unstable appetite patterns. The connection is simple but powerful. Poor sleep leads to higher blood sugar even if diet remains unchanged. The body relies heavily on nighttime recovery to reset hormone balance, including insulin sensitivity, and when this process is interrupted repeatedly, the system begins the next day in a less stable condition. This is where a simple line becomes very meaningful in understanding the pattern. Your night routine controls your morning sugar levels. It is not just a phrase, but a reflection of how deeply sleep quality and metabolic balance are linked. When caffeine is introduced too late in the day, it quietly shifts this balance without immediate awareness, and the effect becomes more noticeable over time rather than instantly. A practical adjustment that often makes a significant difference is avoiding coffee in the late afternoon and evening hours, allowing the body enough time to naturally clear caffeine before sleep begins. This small change helps restore a more natural rhythm in the body, giving it the opportunity to fully recover overnight and maintain better glucose control the next morning. Another major mistake that often goes unnoticed is simply consuming too much coffee throughout the day. While coffee is commonly associated with energy and alertness, excessive intake changes the way the nervous system responds. Caffeine in higher amounts acts as a stronger stress signal to the body, activating pathways that are similar to those triggered during physical or emotional stress. When this happens repeatedly, the body remains in a heightened state of readiness, even when there is no real need for it. This ongoing activation can influence blood sugar regulation because stress hormones play a direct role in glucose release and insulin response. The more frequently the body receives this stress signal, the more difficult it becomes to maintain stable internal balance. Over time, this can lead to fluctuations in energy levels, unexpected cravings, and a feeling of internal restlessness that may not be immediately linked to coffee consumption. The key idea here is simple but often misunderstood. More is not better, especially after 60. At this stage of life, the body naturally becomes more sensitive to stimulants, and what once felt normal in younger years may now produce stronger internal effects. This is why quantity becomes just as important as timing and ingredients. A controlled approach, where coffee intake is limited to a moderate amount, helps reduce unnecessary strain on the nervous system. For many people, 1 to 2 cups a day is enough to enjoy the benefits of coffee without overwhelming the body's regulatory systems. This allows caffeine to support alertness and focus without turning into a constant stress trigger that affects hormonal balance and glucose control. When all of these patterns are observed together, a clearer understanding begins to form about how coffee interacts with the body in everyday life. It is not a single action that determines the outcome, but a combination of timing, quantity, and internal response. This is where the idea of a simple system becomes useful, because instead of trying to remember complicated rules, the focus shifts to a few basic principles that guide the entire habit. The right way to consume coffee does not require giving it up or making drastic lifestyle changes. Instead, it is about adjusting small details that work with the body rather than against it. The first principle is avoiding coffee on an empty stomach so that the body does not receive a sudden stress signal without any nutritional support. The second principle is avoiding sugar overload, which prevents unnecessary glucose spikes and reduces confusion in insulin response. The third principle is maintaining proper timing, ensuring that coffee does not interfere with sleep and overnight recovery processes. The fourth principle is keeping consumption moderate so that caffeine supports energy instead of overwhelming the nervous system. When these four simple adjustments are combined, the overall effect of coffee on the body changes significantly, even though the drink itself remains the same. What makes this approach easier to follow is that it does not require removing something familiar or changing long-standing habits in a drastic way. Instead, it focuses on refining how something is already being done. The same coffee, different results, just by changing how it is consumed. This shift in perspective is important because it moves attention away from restriction and toward balance. The body responds strongly to patterns, and even small adjustments repeated consistently can influence how stable blood sugar levels remain throughout the day. When coffee is aligned with natural rhythms instead of working against them, it becomes a part of a more supportive daily routine rather than a hidden source of imbalance. A simple daily cup has the power to feel like comfort, routine, and energy all at once. Yet the real difference in how it affects the body often comes down to small choices that most people overlook. Coffee itself is not the problem, and it was never meant to be something that needs to be feared or avoided completely. The real shift happens when awareness replaces habit, and when small adjustments begin to guide the way it is consumed each day. It is not about removing something from life that brings enjoyment and familiarity, especially for seniors who have built years of routine around it. It is about understanding that the same cup can behave differently depending on how it is prepared, when it is taken, and how often it is repeated. When these small details are brought into balance, the body responds in a calmer and more stable way, and daily fluctuations begin to feel less intense over time. That is why the most important idea to carry forward is simple and practical. It's not about quitting coffee. It's about drinking it the right way. When small habits are corrected with consistency, the body no longer feels like it is constantly adjusting or reacting to unexpected signals. Instead, it begins to function with more stability, especially in areas like energy levels and blood sugar balance that are deeply influenced by daily routines. Over time, these small changes build up quietly, and the difference becomes noticeable not through sudden transformation, but through gradual improvement in how the body feels throughout the day. There is a natural ease that comes when the system is no longer overwhelmed by unnecessary stress signals, and coffee can still remain a part of life without creating that imbalance. When you fix small habits like this, your body stops fighting you and starts stabilizing naturally. That is where real improvement begins, not through extreme changes, but through simple awareness that fits into everyday life. If this message made sense and helped bring clarity to something that feels familiar yet often misunderstood, take a moment to support the video. Like the video so more people can understand these simple health connections. Subscribe to the channel for more easy and practical health truths explained in a clear way without confusion or complexity. Share this video with someone who drinks coffee every day because small knowledge like this can quietly make a difference in their daily routine and long-term health.